The next disease that we're going to talk about is shyness, al-haya. And you might actually be a little bit confused, because how can shyness be a disease when the Prophet ﷺ, he said, al-haya'u la ya'ti illa bi khair. Shyness does not bring anything except goodness. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ himself was incredibly shy. So for example, after he married Zaynab binti Jahsh radiallahu anha, the Prophet ﷺ, he hosted a walima and he invited his companions. And when the walima finished, everyone left apart from 3 companions who didn't get the hint. They just kind of hung around a bit too long. You know, when there's like parties, there's always that one guy, 2 guys, 3 guys that just hang around. They don't know when it's over. The companions did something kind of similar. But because of the shyness of the Prophet ﷺ, he never asked them to leave until they got the hint themselves, and then they left by themselves. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself lets us know in the Quran how shy the Prophet ﷺ actually is. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَدْخُلُوا بُيُوتَ النَّبِيَّ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْذَنَ لَكُمْ. O believers, do not enter the homes of the Prophet ﷺ unless you're invited. And then Allah continues and he says, do not come too early and just chill around until the meal is ready. And if you are invited, then turn up on time. And once you've eaten, then go back to your homes. And don't stay any extra time for some extra chit-chat. Don't do that. Why? Allah continues the verse. إِنَّ ذَلِكُمْ كَانَ يُؤْذِي النَّبِيَّ فَيَسْتَحْيِي مِنْكُمْ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَسْتَحْيِي مِنَ الْحَقِّ. This behavior is truly annoying to the Prophet ﷺ, but he's too shy to ask you to leave. But Allah is never shy of the truth. Subhanallah. If the Prophet ﷺ was annoyed, he would never say anything because of how incredibly shy he was. And he ﷺ was also shy in many different ways. For example, when he used to work for Khadija radiallahu anha before marrying her, he was too shy to get the wage directly from her. Can you imagine that? It was given to him through an intermediary. He didn't want to face a woman, essentially. The point is that the Prophet ﷺ, who Allah himself described as having perfect character, was a man of incredible shyness. This should tell us a lot. And even the companions, they commented on this, and they gave us an analogy which is just so, it's incredible. He said, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, this is the companion, he said, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أشد حياء من العذراء في خدرها. The Prophet ﷺ, he was more shy than a virgin in seclusion. A woman, first time she gets married, and she's in seclusion with her husband the first time, how shy that woman is, he was more shy than that, subhanAllah. And this quality of shyness wasn't just specific to the Prophet ﷺ, he also taught the Muslims to have this same quality too. One time the Prophet ﷺ, he was walking past one of his companions, Ansari, and he was shouting at another companion for being too shy. So this Ansari was saying, hey, why are you being so shy for? Man up, in our modern day lingo, right? And so when the Prophet ﷺ heard this, he stopped and he said, Da'ahu, فَإِنَّ الْحَيَاءَ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. Leave him alone, because having shyness is from Iman. And this is actually ajib, it's a bit crazy, because we live in a world today where shyness is actually frowned upon. It's seen as a form of weakness, or a lack of confidence, or a sign that you're somehow oppressed. But here you have the Prophet ﷺ teaching us the exact opposite. In fact, if you don't have shyness, you don't have Iman. Did you know that? Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْحَيَاءَ وَالْإِيمَانَ قُرِنَا جَمِيعًا. Verily, shyness and Iman, they come together. If one of them is missing, the other is missing too. So if you don't have shyness, you don't have Iman. If you don't have Iman, how can you say you're a Muslim? You see? In order to have Iman, you have to have shyness as well. But all of this that I've just said might be confusing you even more, because I started by saying that it's a disease, right? It's a disease of the heart. So how can that be? It's actually very, very simple. Shyness is of 2 categories. Haya mamduh, shyness that is praised, and haya madhmum, shyness that is hated. Shyness that is hated is the disease that we're talking about. And so what classifies as shyness that is hated? When your shyness leads you to do one of 2 things. Number 1, not do the good or forbid the evil when you have the ability. Or number 2, not to ask about a matter in your deen. This type of shyness is what's considered the disease. So let me give you some examples. When it comes to not doing the good or forbidding the evil, okay, an example of that is being too worried to ask your manager at work for time off to pray. You're so shy of your manager that you don't go to him and you say, hey, can I have some time off for my press? Okay, this is an example of shyness that is madhmoom, without a shadow of a doubt. Another example is maybe you have a friend that stole right in front of your eyes. They stole something from the shop or whatever, but you're just too shy to confront them about it because you're worried about their reaction, or you just don't like confrontation. This is definitely shyness that's madhmoom. Or for example, you might see someone, a Muslim, be racially attacked in the street. You know, not long ago, I think it was last year, we had a student in Muslim Lighthouse. And she was explaining to us how she just finished praying in the mosque. And she left the mosque, and right opposite the entrance is where the bus was. So she was about to get onto the bus, and someone approached her and started shouting at her. But because the salah just finished, there was a lot of men at the entrance. Everyone was leaving the mosque. They all just looked on, and they stared at this man, this random man, non-Muslim, shouting at a sister with a hijab, and not a single man said anything, subhanAllah. I personally don't know how that happened. It was in London as well. But there are people like this, and this is definitely, if it's from shyness, this is something that is part of the disease. But one thing that I want to say, you have to use wisdom. It goes without saying, okay? Because if you know that by confronting someone, or advising someone, or defending something or someone, or getting involved in anything, if you know that the situation will become worse in some way or another, then don't get involved, okay? This is not part of the disease. If you can think of another way to deliver this confrontation or this advice or whatever in a way where it will make it better, do that. But otherwise, just leave it. And that definitely won't be considered the disease. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Whoever sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If he's not able to do so, then with his tongue. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if he's not able to do so, then with his heart. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And that is the weakest of faith. So if you know that by advising things will get worse, think of a different way to do it to make it better. If you can't, then just leave it, and this is not part of the disease. What about shyness that leads you to not ask questions about your deen? So we finished one, kind of group of examples for the first type. What about the second type? There's many examples that can be given. So if you're a sister and you have a lot of shyness, okay? Let's say you have questions about your menstrual cycle. A lot of sisters, they're very shy to go to their teacher that they can actually ask whenever they want, right? But they choose not to ask about matters to do with their menstruation because they're shy. This is definitely part of the disease of shyness that is hated. Same applies if you're a brother. If you're really shy about a topic which is very sensitive for you and you don't go and ask and you have the ability to ask, then this is something that's part of the disease. And it's actually quite bad. Why? Because firstly, Allah commands you, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. And if you don't ask the people of knowledge who know what Allah wants from you, and you choose to guess the answer instead, just because you're too shy, then essentially what you've done is you've turned away from following Allah to following your desires, correct? Which is problematic for obvious reasons. You have to realize that we were all born with zero knowledge. وَاللَّهُ أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. Allah brought you out of the wombs of your mothers while you knew nothing. You had no knowledge whatsoever, empty slate. And so to learn, you have to seek knowledge, and to seek knowledge, you have to ask questions. But with all of that said, everything that I've said about the bad types of shyness, the disease, any other form of shyness that you can think of, whether that be with the opposite gender, with your friends, with your family, even between you and Allah, know that this is incredibly good and incredibly praised. It's a very beautiful quality to have, and don't let society tell you otherwise. And so now we're ready to move on to the cures, and there's actually just one cure for it. And that cure is to simply just leave it. In the times where you have a question, or you have the ability to do something good or to stop something bad, and you're very shy, you have to force yourself to do something about it no matter how shy you are. And for those who are very, very shy, it can be very difficult at the beginning. And know that there will be times where you fail. But Allah knows the state of your heart. And He also says in the Quran, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Be mindful of Allah to the best of your ability. If you try your best despite your shyness and you still can't bring yourself to doing it, then you trying your best is enough for now. But if you do that again and again and again and again, the beautiful thing is eventually you will do it, right? And so keep battling through your failures and realize that it's a problem and keep pushing through, and eventually Allah will wipe that disease out of your heart, inshallah ta'ala. and that will do for the disease of shyness.